Hey all, this is Professor Steve from Grand Canyon University, and today's video will be installing Windows 10 as a workstation in our networked environment of virtual machines. So in a previous video, we installed the server, Windows Server 2012 R2, as a server. We didn't get any farther than really just some basic setup. Server can do quite a bit more than what we did in that one, but in this video we're going to set up a workstation so that we can really have some true networking tests and things to that effect. So what I've done here in VMware, in VMware Fusion here, but the steps for installing Windows 10 are the same, and we generally do the same concepts. Just go into the settings of this thing, just make sure that we do give it more than one processor core. This is true in both the Windows side and the Mac side, but we want to give it 2 processors at least and 2 gigs of RAM. Couple other things: network, make sure you set it to private to my Mac so that the server and the workstation can talk together. On the Windows side, this is called putting the network into host only mode. The only communications that are going to occur is between the VMs, not the host or any of the other devices on your regular network. So that is there. Hard disk, I did change this to 30 gig as opposed to defaults to 60, which is perfectly fine in a lab environment. We're not going to be doing anything real crazy, so 30 gig is more than enough. And that is it. So I'm going to close out those settings. Again, those settings are whether it's running on Mac or Windows, and we'll just hit start. That's fine. This is giving us a warning that we may see some different things there. So if we have 2 flash drives, the system might get confused on where they're supposed to go. So you need to press any key to boot the DVD. We've already mounted the Windows 10 ISO at this point. That was downloaded from on the hub, and we want to make sure that when you did download that on the hub, the ISO from on the hub, that you did get the key, the server activation key. So if you've watched the Server 2012 video, these are going to look pretty similar. It's going to pick the language and keyboard method and install now. I do like how Microsoft made the setups pretty easy and similar on multiple platforms. So we'll wait for this to get to the next screen. I'll accept the terms here and next. Now, the one thing it did not do that the Server 2012 did was ask for the key. We'll do the activation, or you would normally do the activation once you actually got into Windows. In this case, we're going to do a custom install Windows only. We've got a 30 gig drive. We're hitting new and apply and OK. And so it did make some additional system partitions that you don't really need to worry about. We just want to make sure we're selected on the big guy, the 29.4 gig, or whatever size you set yours to, and then hit next. And it's going to go through the process here of installing all the files, any features, updates, that type of thing. And then once that's all finished, then you'll need to do a restart. This process could take a little bit of time, could take a lot of time. It depends on if you're running solid state drives, spinning disk drives, like normal spinning disk drives, or even this could be in your VMware, or your VM could be hosted on a external hard drive, which might make it a little slower as well. So once this is finished and ready to do the restart, we'll come back and take it from there. And through the magic of video editing, we've saved ourselves about 5 minutes of install time, and it's getting ready to finish doing the updates, and a restart coming up here in mere moments. And there we go. Restarting here will automatically go, or you can press the button. We'll just do that in the interest of saving time. And when this comes back up, it's going to start the process of making sure that all the devices are ready to go. keyboard, mice, network, USB, sound, if you so desired. And you'll see some down here at the bottom. It'll say getting devices ready and things to that effect. So once it's ready to go, it'll be prompted or come up to a window where it's going to ask for an administrator password. In this particular instance, you're going to have to set that, and then you want to make sure that you set it to something that you're going to remember, whether you write it down in a text document, note, piece of paper, whatever, stick it on a post-it note under your keyboard. I highly don't recommend that. It's from a security posture, it's not a good idea, but in this particular instance, in the lab, so who cares? So just about ready, getting finished, and then we'll be ready to go as far as the password goes.
A little sign in here, a touch of
back
Wi-Fi
up here,
and
and it's basically trying to help you with some fancy words and such. We're going to turn that off.
The sound icon. If you need an assistive screen reader, press the Windows Control.
We'll turn that one off. So basically it's going to go through a process here about choosing your keyboard and some basics again. And United States, if that's where you're at. US for the keyboard. Want to add a second keyboard layout? Usually no. It's going to ask you about the network. In this case, we're just going to skip for now because we'll do that manually here in a moment. And then who's going to be using this PC? So it's going to be asking for a username at this point. So we're just going to say workstation. I got to spell it right. Next. Create a super memorable password, or yes, correct anything that you can remember. Just go ahead and set it to be that of my server password, since that way I don't have to remember more than one. Next. Add hint, server password. Okay, and it's going to ask for some Cortana setup, so we just know at this point for this. I usually turn all these off. It's more about Microsoft invading your privacy that you don't really need to do, so just turn those off. Next. Or accept. And this is last step, and it's going to get a few things ready to go. Trying to think it's going to try to do some updates, but it can't connect to the internet right now, so that's not going to work out real well. And it's going to talk about how we're here for you, and getting everything ready to make sure you have a great experience and all that good stuff. So we'll come back up on here at the desktop. Alright, and we're back at the magic desktop of Windows 10. This one doesn't have any fancy new setup type things like the Server Manager and Server 2012, but in this case we're just going to do a few housekeeping things. First and foremost, we want to make sure that we change the computer name. Again, this is not controlled by what you name the workstation name here like you do in VMware. So that's just a way for VMware to keep everything nice and straight. But in here, we want to right-click on the Start button and go up to System is one way. I don't actually prefer this way. The way we're really kind of used to is if you are in here and you right click on this PC and go to Properties. This looks more familiar with what I'm used to, and Windows or Microsoft's just trying to do some more fancy ways to do things, which is perfectly fine if that's the way you want to go. But you could click on rename this PC and give it a fancy name here, or you can come over here and do a change settings as well. And this looks kind of like the window from the Server 2012 screen. So since we already went over that once, we'll go the fancy route here. So we're going to give this a clever name. Again, make sure you keep this under 15 characters. So that's 10 characters, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Oh, there. All right. So that's 15 characters. And we'll go to next. And it's going to say it needs a restart. So we're going to do restart later because I want to show you a couple things first. And we'll close this guy and this one as well. We're going to go ahead and configure the networking portion. So if you right click on the what I call the computer screen with pitchfork, but it's not really that, open network and sharing center, change adapter settings. This is reading the Bluetooth off of my Mac, but VMware is really good about pulling devices in if it needs to. So we're going to familiarize ourselves with the Ethernet adapter, and it's given it an IP address automatically because of the way the networking part works, but we're going to manually assign one. So if you remember from the server video, we set the IP address manually there. And so we can do one of two things. We can either set it manually here, which is perfectly fine, or we can set it to DHCP. Now, right now, the two systems are not going to talk because they are on different subnets. And what I mean by that, and these are the list of private addresses, but right now my server is 192.168.0.10, and this workstation is 192.168. I forget. Let's see here. Is 38.129. So the difference here is that they're actually on different networks. So systems on different networks can't talk to each other without the use of a router or switch that has some kind of routing ability. So what I want to do is set the IP address to be the same. So in this case, setting it to be the same in a Class C would be the equivalent of setting the first 3 octets to be the same. Okay, so we're going to go back into properties and change the IPv4, TCP IPv4. Set this thing to 192.168.0.15 just to keep the numbers nice and clean. So the server is .10, my workstation is .15. Those are what I usually use, and they work out pretty well. Set the default gateway to .1. Now the gateway is the same on the server and the workstation because it's the central point where all communications are going to flow. Usually the default gateway is a switch or a router in your environment because that's controlling communication. And then so we're on the workstation, prefer DNS, since this is going to be a little network, one server, one workstation type of deal. I want all of my DNS requests to go to the server. So what I do here is set the IP address to be the server. So .10 is what I set the IP address of my server, and then we're all good there. Okay, and close. And right now I still have the little yellow box, which is perfectly fine, but we need to do a restart to make sure the computer name changes correctly and that the network updates correctly. Anytime you do a DNS change, it's always a good idea to restart the system just to make sure everything is all kosher and on the same page. So that is installing Windows 10 in a VMware environment. There is an easy install version like they did with the Server 2012 video out there for that, but we did the manual walkthrough method, which worked out pretty well. So that's it for now. I'm going to restart this system, and we'll see you next time.